For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled over 700 star systems with an iron fist. Their massive dreadnoughts could crack planets in half. Their technology was centuries ahead of any other species. No one had ever successfully challenged their dominance. Until today. A single, unknown ship had just destroyed an entire Imperial fleet in under 30 minutes. No survivors. No distress calls. Just empty space where 1,000 warships used to be. But, here's what terrified the Empire most: the ship's energy signature didn't match any known species in their vast databases. Someone new had entered the galactic stage, and they had just declared war on the most powerful civilization in the known universe. The question wasn't whether this mysterious enemy could defeat the Empire. The question was, who were these newcomers, and why had they been hiding in the shadows for so long? The galaxy was about to find out that humanity had finally decided to introduce itself. Admiral Kethvar's 6 eyes focused on the holographic display floating before his command throne. Each crimson orb reflected the pulsing emergency lights that bathed the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion in blood-red shadows. His scaled hands gripped the armrests until his claws left deep gouges in the reinforced metal. "Show me again," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority that had conquered 17 star systems. The tactical officer, a nervous Veltani with trembling tentacles, manipulated the controls. The hologram shifted, displaying the debris field that had once been the 47th Imperial Fleet. Where 1,000 ships had patrolled the outer rim territories just hours ago, only twisted metal and cooling plasma remained. The timestamp shows the engagement lasted exactly 27 minutes and 14 seconds, the officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. No distress signals were transmitted. No escape pods detected. Complete annihilation. Kethvar's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary pair scanned the surrounding bridge crew. 3,000 years of unchallenged dominion had made them soft. Comfortable. They had forgotten what real fear looked like. Today, they were learning. Energy signatures? That's the problem, Admiral. The Veltani's tentacles writhed with anxiety. The readings don't match anything in our databases. Not Ceridian plasma weaponry. Not Corbin's singularity bombs. Not even the theoretical weapons the tech mages of Altair 7 were developing before we glassed their homeworld. Unknown doesn't mean impossible, Kethvar growled. Every species in this galaxy boasts to imperial might. Someone is playing games. But, even as he spoke the words, doubt crept through his mind like poison. The 47th Fleet hadn't been some border patrol of outdated frigates. Admiral Yextar had commanded the fleet personally, piloting the flightship World Ender, a dreadnought capable of reducing entire planets to cosmic dust. The ship's shields could withstand direct impacts from stellar cores. Its weapons could punch holes through gas giants. Yet something had swept through the entire fleet like wildfire through dry grass. "Sir," called Lieutenant Commander Zaloke from the communications station, his insectoid features twisted with concern. "We're receiving priority transmissions from Imperial Command. They're recalling all frontier fleets." Kethvar's blood chilled. In 3 millennia of Imperial expansion, no emperor had ever issued a general recall. The Empire didn't retreat. The Empire didn't show weakness. The Empire conquered and consumed until nothing remained but Imperial will imposed across the stars. Put it through. The holographic display shifted again, revealing the imposing figure of Grand Admiral Thexnol, Supreme Commander of all Imperial forces. The ancient Zephyrian ceremonial armor gleamed with the accumulated honors of 1,000 victories. His 4 arms gestured with the practiced authority of absolute power. "Admiral Kethvar," Thexnol's voice carried across the void, each word weighted with centuries of command. "You will immediately withdraw all forces to the inner sectors. Defense positions only. No pursuit. No investigation. No engagement with unknown vessels. Grand Admiral, with respect, the Empire doesn't run from, the Empire adapts to survive, Admiral." Thexnol's interruption carried an edge that could cut through starship hull plating. 3 more fleets have gone silent in the past 4 hours. the 23rd, the 61st, and the entire Corvan Sector Defense Force. 7,000 ships. Gone. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. 7,000 ships represented more firepower than most civilizations could muster in their entire history. The mathematical impossibility of such losses struck every crew member like a physical blow. Grand Admiral, Kethvar's voice came out steadier than he felt. What exactly are we dealing with? We don't know. The admission came hard from the Supreme Commander, who had never acknowledged uncertainty in his 3-century career. Long-range sensors detected a single vessel at each engagement site. Always the same configuration, approximately 2 kilometers in length, unknown design principles, energy readings that our best scientists call theoretically impossible. A single ship? The Veltani tactical officer couldn't suppress her shocked exclamation. Thexnell's ancient gaze shifted to her through the hologram. Yes, Lieutenant. One ship. Every time. It appears, eliminates our forces with surgical precision, and vanishes before reinforcements arrive. We've lost more vessels in the past 6 hours than in the last 300 years of conquest combined. The implications hit the bridge crew like a series of hammer blows. If one enemy vessel could destroy entire fleets, what would happen when they encountered 10? 100? Had the Empire finally met an opponent that could match its technological superiority? Orders, Grand Admiral? Kethvar asked, though every instinct screamed against withdrawal. Establish defensive perimeters around all core worlds. Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel from border colonies. And, Admiral. Thexnell paused, his voice dropping to a tone Kethvar had never heard from the legendary commander. Begin implementing Protocol 7. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Protocol 7 existed only in theoretical scenarios that Imperial strategists had created for academic exercises. It was the Empire's contingency plan for facing an opponent with superior technology and unknown capabilities. It assumed the possibility of defeat. Sir, the communications officer spoke up hesitantly, incoming transmission from the Zeridian Council. They're requesting immediate audience with Imperial Command. The Zeridians? Kethvar's confusion was evident. The crystalline beings had been vassals of the Empire for over 2,000 years, providing advanced computing systems in exchange for protection from aggressive neighbors. What could they possibly want at a time like this? Unknown, Admiral. But, the transmission carries Emperor-level priority codes. Before Kethvar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning lights bathed the bridge as proximity sensors detected incoming vessels. The tactical display updated, showing 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of sensor range. Configuration unknown, the Veltani officer reported, her voice tight with fear. Energy signatures matched the profiles from the destroyed fleet sites. Battle stations. Kethvar commanded, rising from his throne as adrenaline flooded his system. All weapons online. Raise shields to maximum. The massive dreadnought shuddered as its weapons systems came to life. Particle cannons that could vaporize moons swiveled to track the incoming threats. Shield generators that could deflect the explosive force of supernovas hummed with barely contained energy. But, as the unknown ships approached, every sensor reading defied explanation. Their hulls seemed to absorb sensor beams rather than reflect them. Their propulsion systems showed no conventional energy signatures, no plasma drives, no antimatter reactors, no quantum field manipulators. They moved through space as if the fundamental laws of physics were merely suggestions. Distance to target? Kethvar demanded. 1,000,000 kilometers and closing. But, sir. The tactical officer's voice cracked. They're not following standard approach vectors. They're moving in patterns that shouldn't be possible at those velocities. No ship can make those turns at near light speed without crew liquefaction. Through the bridge's massive viewport, 3 points of light grew steadily brighter against the starfield. Even at extreme range, something about their configuration seemed wrong. They moved with a fluid grace that spoke of technologies beyond Imperial understanding. Open a channel, Kethvar ordered. All frequencies. Channel open, Admiral. Kethvar drew himself to his full imposing height, every inch the conquering admiral who had brought dozens of worlds under imperial rule. Unknown vessels, you are approaching imperial space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately or face the consequences. Static filled the communication channel for long seconds. Then, a voice responded, clear, calm, and speaking perfect imperial standard despite its obviously alien accent. Imperial vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration ship Defiance. We're here to discuss terms. Terms? Kethvar's confusion was complete. No species had ever approached the Empire to discuss anything other than surrender. What terms? Who are you? What is this human designation? We're the species that's been cleaning up your messes in the Outer Rim, Admiral. And, we're here to inform you that the galaxy has new management. The casual confidence in the alien voice sent ice through Kethvar's veins. This wasn't the desperate bluster of a cornered enemy or the formal diplomacy of established powers. This was the voice of someone who held all the advantages and knew it. You destroyed our fleets, Kethvar stated, struggling to maintain his authoritative tone. We neutralized military threats to civilian populations, came the correction. Your forces were engaged in what our species calls ethnic cleansing of the Talarian colonies. We don't tolerate genocide, regardless of who's committing it. The Empire's internal affairs are not subject to alien interference. A pause. When the human voice returned, it carried a note of cold amusement. Admiral, you seem to be operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. This isn't a negotiation between equals. This isn't even a surrender demand. This is us informing you of new realities. The tactical display updated as the three human ships moved into a perfect triangular formation around the Imperial dreadnought. At this range, their strange, organic-looking hulls were clearly visible. They resembled no known starship design, too smooth, too integrated, as if they had been grown rather than built. Sir, the Veltani officer whispered urgently, our targeting systems can't achieve weapon locks. Something about their hull composition is interfering with our guidance systems. Kethvar's confidence crumbled another degree. The Eternal Dominion carried enough firepower to sterilize entire continents, but, if their weapons couldn't target the enemy ships, they might as well be armed with harsh language. What do you want? He finally asked, the question tasting bitter in his mouth. For starters? An immediate ceasefire against all civilian populations. Your forces are to withdraw from any system where non-combatants are present. Second, you're going to release every slave species in your territory and provide them with resources to rebuild their civilizations. Impossible. Kethvar roared. The Empire spans 700 star systems. Our economy depends on your economy is about to undergo significant restructuring, Admiral. The age of the Zephyrian Empire is over. The question is whether it ends with a transition to peaceful coexistence or with the complete destruction of your civilization. The threat hung in the space between ships like a physical presence. Through the viewport, Kethvar could see the human vessels maintaining their perfect formation, patient as predators. You're bluffing, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. 3 ships against the entire Imperial Navy? Against 1,000 star systems? Against civilizations that have ruled this galaxy since before your species crawled out of whatever primitive mud pit spawned you? Admiral, Captain Chen's voice carried a note of genuine sadness, you still don't understand, do you? We've been watching your empire for over 2 centuries. We've seen every atrocity, catalogued every injustice, documented every war crime. We've prepared for this moment longer than most of your species have been alive. 2 centuries? The timeline made no sense. Imperial records contained no reference to any human species. If they had possessed this level of technology for so long, why remain hidden? Oh, and, Admiral? Those aren't our only 3 ships. Those are just the diplomatic vessels. As if summoned by her words, space around the Imperial dreadnought began to shimmer. One by one, human ships decloaked from perfect stealth, their hulls materializing like ghosts becoming solid. 10 ships. 20. 50. 100 human vessels surrounded the pride of the Imperial fleet, each one radiating energy signatures that defied comprehension. The Eternal Dominion, which had seemed like an unstoppable instrument of Imperial will just moments ago, now appeared fragile and primitive by comparison. "This is impossible," Kethvar breathed, staring at the tactical display that showed his ship surrounded by impossible odds. "Admiral, may I suggest you contact your superiors? I think they're going to want to hear about humanity's formal introduction to galactic politics." The communication channel closed, leaving Kethvar alone with the magnitude of what had just occurred. The Zephyrian Empire, unchallenged masters of the galaxy for 3 millennia, had just encountered a species that treated their most powerful warships like outdated curiosities. As he reached for the communications console to contact Imperial Command, one thought dominated his mind: the galaxy was about to change forever, and the Empire was no longer in control of that change. In the depths of space around them, 100 human ships waited with infinite patience, their alien crews prepared for whatever came next. The age of Imperial dominance was ending, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. But, first, the Empire had to learn the most difficult lesson in its 3,000-year existence. They were no longer the apex predators of the cosmos. Emperor Vaxthilon the Eternal had ruled the Zephyrian Empire for 800 years, longer than any monarch in galactic history. His golden throne room, carved from a single massive crystal mine from the heart of a collapsed star, had witnessed the surrender of countless species and the signing of 10,000 conquest treaties. Never once had he been forced to consider the possibility of defeat. Today, that impossible scenario crashed into his reality like a meteor striking his homeworld. "They're called humans," Grand Admiral Thexnol reported, his forearms gesturing toward holographic displays that showed the devastating losses across Imperial space. "Intelligence suggests they've been observing us for approximately 2 standard centuries, remaining hidden while building their forces." The Emperor's primary consciousness focused on the data while his secondary minds processed tactical implications. 800 years of experience had taught him to remain calm during crises, but the numbers on these reports defied all logic. 12 Imperial fleets destroyed. Over 15,000 ships lost. 0 enemy casualties. 2 centuries, he mused, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the crystal chamber. Long enough to study our weaknesses. Long enough to prepare countermeasures for every weapon in our arsenal. Yes, Your Majesty. Their technology appears to be several hundred years ahead of ours in most categories. But it's not just superior tech, it's completely different tech. Our scientists are calling their energy manipulation impossible based on known physics. Through the throne room's transparent walls, the capital city of Zephyr Prime stretched to the horizon. Billions of beings from 100 conquered species worked in perfect harmony, their lives dedicated to serving Imperial glory. The sight usually filled Vaxthilon with satisfaction at the order his empire had brought to the chaotic galaxy. Now, it filled him with dread at what might happen if that order collapsed. "Show me their demands again," he commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing the image of a human female. Captain Sarah Chen appeared unremarkable by Imperial standards, no obvious combat modifications, no intimidating physical features, no ceremonial scars marking great victories. She looked almost fragile compared to the genetically enhanced warriors who typically commanded Imperial attention. Yet this seemingly ordinary being had just delivered an ultimatum that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. "The human terms are non-negotiable," Thexnol continued. "Complete withdrawal from all civilian systems. Immediate release of all slave species with full resources for reconstruction. Reparations for what they term war crimes committed over the past millennium. And complete disarmament of all Imperial forces beyond what they consider defensive necessities. They want us to surrender," the Emperor stated flatly. "They want us to transform, Your Majesty. From a conquest-based empire to what they call a cooperative galactic community." Emperor Vaxthilon's laugh carried undertones of disbelief and rage. "Cooperative? We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have brought order to 700 star systems. Without Imperial control, this galaxy would tear itself apart in tribal conflicts and resource wars. That's essentially what Captain Chen said you would say, Thexnell admitted reluctantly. She indicated that your species' inability to conceptualize non-hierarchical governance was one of the primary reasons for their intervention. The Emperor's mental processes ground to a halt. The human had predicted his exact response? That level of psychological profiling suggested observation and analysis far beyond casual surveillance. It suggested they had been studying imperial psychology with scientific precision for decades. Your Majesty, interrupted General Kothmar, the Empire's chief military strategist, we need to discuss defense preparations. The humans have demonstrated they can destroy our fleets with minimal effort, but they haven't yet moved against fortified positions. If we concentrate our forces around the core worlds. General, the Emperor's voice carried a warning edge, explain to me how fortified positions will help against enemies who can apparently ignore our weapons and shielding. Well, Your Majesty, we could. Kothmar's confidence evaporated as he realized he had no answer. Every imperial defensive strategy assumed enemies using familiar technology operating under known physical laws. The humans seemed to exist outside those parameters entirely. An aide hurried into the throne room, prostrating himself before speaking. Your Majesty, urgent communication from the Outer Rim territories. The Tellurian colonies are celebrating. Celebrating what? Thexnell demanded. The human intervention, Grand Admiral. The colonies we were pacifying have declared their independence and are requesting human protection. Similar reports are coming in from 17 other systems. Emperor Vaxthelon felt the first real fear of his 800-year reign. The Empire's control had always depended on the absolute certainty of imperial victory. Rebellious populations stayed in line because resistance meant annihilation. But, if the humans could protect rebels from imperial retaliation. How many systems have declared independence? He asked quietly. 43 so far, Your Majesty. The number is growing every hour. The mathematical implications struck everyone in the throne room simultaneously. 43 systems represented massive industrial capacity, millions of soldiers, and trillion credit tax revenues. If the rebellion spread to even 10% of imperial territory, the economic disruption would cascade through every sector of the empire. Your Majesty, Thexnell said carefully, we need to consider the possibility that the humans have been planning this for much longer than we initially assumed. The speed and coordination of these uprisings suggests advanced preparation. You're suggesting they've been in contact with rebel elements? I'm suggesting they may have been organizing rebel elements. 2 centuries is enough time to build extensive intelligence networks across our entire territory. The Emperor's primary minds reeled at the implications. If true, it meant the humans hadn't simply stumbled across imperial atrocities and decided to intervene. It meant they had been systematically preparing to dismantle his empire from within while building the military capability to do so from without. It meant everything, every conquest, every expansion, every moment of imperial triumph over the past 2 centuries had been observed, catalogued, and planned against. Your Majesty, another aide announced, incoming priority transmission from Captain Chen. She's requesting immediate audience. With me directly? The audacity was staggering. No alien had ever demanded direct communication with the Emperor himself. Formal diplomatic protocols required months of preparation, cultural briefings, and ceremonial presentations. Yes, Your Majesty. She says she has information about what she calls the real scope of the situation. Emperor Vaxthelon considered his options. He could refuse, maintaining imperial dignity while remaining ignorant of enemy capabilities. He could agree, potentially gaining crucial intelligence while acknowledging this human as his equal. Neither choice appealed to him, but ignorance had become more dangerous than injured pride. Put her through. The throne room's holographic systems activated, projecting Captain Chen's image at life-size in the center of the crystal chamber. She appeared exactly as she had in the tactical reports, unremarkable, professional, carrying herself with quiet confidence that seemed entirely inappropriate for someone addressing the most powerful being in the galaxy. Emperor Vaxthelon, she said simply, offering a slight nod that could charitably be called respectful but fell far short of proper imperial protocol. Human, he replied, putting as much imperial authority as possible into the single word. You have brought chaos to ordered space. You will explain yourself. Captain Shen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested she was suppressing amusement. Emperor, I'm afraid there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. We haven't brought chaos to your empire. We've simply stopped preventing the natural consequences of your actions from occurring. Explain. For 237 years, human observers have documented systematic genocide, slavery, environmental destruction, and cultural annihilation across your territory. We've watched you destroy 17 separate civilizations and enslave 43 others. We've recorded over 4 million individual war crimes. The specific numbers hit the throne room like physical blows. The Emperor's intelligence services were among the best in the galaxy, but apparently they had never detected the comprehensive surveillance operation the humans had been conducting. During this time, Chen continued, we've also been contacted by resistance movements from virtually every species under Imperial control. They've begged us for help, for intervention, for anything that might free them from Imperial oppression. And, you refused, Thexnol interrupted, until now. We refused because we had a policy of non-interference in natural galactic development. We believed every species deserved the chance to solve their own problems, to grow through their own struggles. Her expression hardened. But, what you've been doing isn't natural development. It's systematic elimination of diversity, creativity, and hope. We brought order, the Emperor declared. Without imperial structure, these species would destroy themselves in endless conflicts. Emperor, may I show you something? Without waiting for permission, Captain Chen activated her own holographic displays. The crystal throne room filled with images of worlds the Emperor recognized: imperial colonies, mining operations, agricultural centers. But, the images showed them as they had been before imperial conquest. The Tellurian homeworld had been covered with floating cities that moved with the seasons, their architecture integrating perfectly with the planet's unique electromagnetic fields. The Viridian system had contained orbital gardens where millions of species coexisted in carefully balanced ecosystems. The Corvan civilization had been composed of living starships that could adapt their biology to any environment. All of it was gone, replaced with standardized imperial infrastructure. This is what you destroyed, Chen said quietly. Not primitive chaos. Not tribal warfare. You eliminated 43 unique approaches to existence, 43 different solutions to the problems of conscious life in the universe. They were inefficient, General Kothmar protested. Imperial methods produce more resources with less waste. General, do you know what the Tellurian floating cities were actually doing? They were processing atmospheric toxins and converting them into breathable air while generating zero waste. Your efficient mining operations have poisoned 17 worlds that were previously self-sustaining paradises. The holographic displays shifted, showing environmental data from imperial worlds. Toxic atmospheric readings. Dead oceans. Scarred landscapes. The numbers were damning, but they had always been classified as acceptable losses in the pursuit of imperial expansion. You turned a galaxy full of wonders into a factory for producing imperial dominance, Chen continued. And, when species resisted, you didn't just conquer them. You tried to erase them entirely. That is the nature of empire, Emperor Vaxthelon stated, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. The strong rule the weak. Order emerges from chaos. This is how civilizations advance. No, Emperor. That's how civilizations stagnate. Captain Chen's image stepped closer to the throne, her eyes meeting the Emperor's directly. Humanity has been watching the galaxy for over 2 centuries. Do you know what we've observed? Every world under imperial control has become less creative, less innovative, less alive than it was before conquest. You haven't been building civilization. You've been managing its slow death. The accusation hung in the crystal air like poison gas. 800 years of imperial expansion, thousands of worlds brought under control, millions of beings given purpose and direction, all dismissed as a failure of vision. What do you want from us? The Emperor asked finally. We want you to step back and let the galaxy heal. We want you to release every species you've enslaved and give them the resources they need to rebuild what you destroyed. We want you to accept that your way of organizing society isn't the only way, and it definitely isn't the best way. And if we refuse? Captain Shen's expression didn't change, but her words carried absolute finality. Then, we'll dismantle your empire by force, evacuate every non-Zephyrian population to safe territories, and leave your species to figure out how to survive without slave labor. You would commit genocide against us for opposing you? Emperor, we wouldn't harm a single Zephyrian civilian. But, your government, your military, your entire power structure? That we'll eliminate completely. She paused, letting the implications sink in. The difference between us and you is that we can separate the people from the system they're trapped in. The communication channel closed, leaving the throne room in stunned silence. The most powerful being in the galaxy sat motionless on his crystal throne, processing the conversation that had just redefined his understanding of reality. Your Majesty, Thexnol finally spoke, we need to make a decision. The humans have given us 72 hours to begin implementing their demands, or they'll begin what they call active measures. Emperor Vaxthelon closed his eyes, accessing memory banks that contained 8 centuries of experience ruling the galaxy's greatest empire. In all that time, he had never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved through superior force, advanced technology, or political manipulation. But, the humans had demonstrated superior force. Their technology made imperial science look primitive. And, their political understanding of his empire exceeded his own intelligence services capabilities. Grand Admiral, he said slowly, what would happen if we attempted to negotiate partial compliance? Released some species, withdrew from some territories, but maintained core imperial holdings? Your Majesty, based on their previous statements, I believe they would consider partial compliance to be complete rejection of their terms. These humans don't appear to operate under traditional diplomatic protocols. No, the Emperor agreed, they don't. They operate like... He paused, searching for the right comparison. Like teachers correcting disobedient students. The realization struck him with devastating clarity. The humans weren't treating the Zephyrian Empire as an equal opponent or even as a dangerous enemy. They were treating imperial civilization like a species that had taken a wrong turn and needed guidance back to proper development. It was the most insulting thing any being had ever implied about his life's work. It was also, he was beginning to suspect, absolutely true. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent the last 15 years studying imperial psychology from the observation post hidden in the Kepler Nebula. As humanity's leading expert on Zephyrian behavioral patterns, she knew exactly how Emperor Vaxthelon would respond to Captain Shen's ultimatum. The problem was, knowing and preparing for it were two different things entirely. Admiral Morrison, she called across the command center of the Human Defense Platform Sanctuary, the Emperor just activated Protocol 7. They're moving to full defensive positions around their core worlds. Admiral James Morrison, a man whose 40-year military career had prepared him for every contingency except this one, studied the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Right on schedule. How long until they implement the secondary measures? 18 hours, give or take. The Imperial command structure is remarkably predictable once you understand their cultural imperatives. Dr. Vasquez manipulated the holographic interface, showing troop movements across Imperial space. They're consolidating forces around Zephyr Prime, the major industrial worlds, and the primary military academies. Classic fortress mentality. Which gives us exactly what we need, Morrison agreed. While they're pulling back to protect what they consider most valuable, we can begin liberation operations in the abandoned territories. The command center bustled with activity as humanity's carefully planned operation moved into its next phase. For over 2 centuries, human observers had mapped every Imperial installation, catalogued every defensive system, and established contact with resistance movements on thousands of worlds. What appeared to the Empire as sudden, overwhelming force was actually the culmination of the most extensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Sir, called Lieutenant Commander Park from the communications station, we're receiving confirmation from advanced teams across 47 systems. local populations are ready for immediate evacuation and relocation. Morrison nodded grimly. The human strategy had always been humanitarian first, military second. Every world they liberated would be emptied of its enslaved populations and relocated to prepared colonies outside Imperial reach. No one would be left behind to suffer Imperial retaliation. What about the Zephyrian civilians on those worlds? Dr. Vasquez asked, voicing the ethical concern that had dominated human strategic planning for decades. Standard protocol applies, Doctor. We evacuate them too, whether they want to go or not. No one deserves to be caught in the middle when their government decides to fight rather than reform. The decision represented everything that distinguished human intervention from traditional galactic conquest. Where other species would have seen enemy civilians as acceptable casualties or useful hostages, humanity saw them as victims of their own government's choices. Every Zephyrian family would be safely relocated before any military action commenced. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez pulled up another display. I'm seeing some unusual readings from the core worlds. The Emperors ordered the activation of something called Project Godslayer. None of our intelligence networks have any information about it. Morrison's expression darkened. A secret weapon program we missed? That's concerning. 2 centuries of observation and we still don't know everything about their capabilities. Sir, it might not be a weapons program, offered tactical analyst Commander Torres. Imperial naming conventions often reflect their psychological state rather than actual project parameters. Godslayer could be anything from a new shield system to a psychological warfare initiative. Or it could be exactly what it sounds like, Morrison replied. A weapon designed to kill beings they consider godlike. Maintain alert status across all fleets. If the Empire has managed to develop something we haven't seen before. His words trailed off as every display in the command center suddenly shifted to show the same image, a massive space station emerging from the gas giant Zephyr Magnus, where no station had ever existed before. The structure was enormous even by Imperial standards, easily 50 kilometers in diameter and bristling with energy signatures that made no sense according to known physics. How did we miss that? Dr. Vasquez breathed. Hidden inside the gas giant's magnetic field, Torres reported, fingers flying across his analytical controls. The electromagnetic interference would mask almost any energy signature. But the power readings we're getting now. He paused, recalibrating his sensors. Admiral, this thing is generating more energy than a small star. Morrison activated the fleet communication system. All vessels, this is Flag Command. Unknown Imperial superweapon has been revealed in the Zephyr system. Maintain defensive positions and prepare for whatever they're planning to throw at us. Dr. Vasquez was studying the station's configuration with growing alarm. Admiral, I don't think this is a weapon in any conventional sense. The energy patterns are all wrong. It's like they're trying to manipulate spacetime itself. Trying to do what exactly? I'm not sure. But, if I had to guess, they're attempting some kind of dimensional manipulation. Maybe trying to open a portal to another universe, or fold space to bring in reinforcements from across their empire simultaneously. The implications struck Morrison immediately. If the Empire could instantly transport their scattered forces to any point in space, the human strategy of picking off isolated Imperial fleets would become impossible. Worse, they might be able to summon forces from outside the galaxy entirely. How long until that thing becomes operational? He asked. Unknown, sir. The energy buildup is increasing exponentially, but we have no baseline for comparison. It could be minutes or months. Morrison made the decision that would define the next phase of human intervention. All fleets, advance to attack positions. We can't let them complete whatever they're building. Sir, Dr. Vasquez protested, that violates our primary directive. We're supposed to minimize casualties and give them every opportunity to surrender peacefully. Doctor, if that station completes its activation sequence, peaceful resolution might become impossible. Sometimes you have to choose between your principles and the survival of everyone you're trying to protect. The human fleet began moving toward the Imperial core worlds, abandoning their careful strategy of gradual pressure in favor of direct confrontation. For the first time since the operation began, humanity was gambling everything on a single engagement. Meanwhile, aboard the Imperial Station Godslayer, Emperor Vaxthelon monitored the approaching human forces with grim satisfaction. The massive construction project had consumed the resources of 12 entire star systems and represented the culmination of Imperial physics research spanning 3 centuries. If the humans thought their technological superiority made them invincible, they were about to discover the difference between advanced science and desperate ingenuity. Your Majesty, reported Chief Scientist Velvar, dimensional fold generators are at 93% capacity. We can initiate the summoning protocol in approximately 6 standard hours. Excellent. And our guests are prepared for immediate deployment? Yes, Your Majesty. Though I must again express concern about the implications of this alliance. Emperor Vaxthelon's laugh carried harmonics of desperation and dark amusement. Velvar, the humans force us to choose between transformation and destruction. I choose a third option, evolution through necessity. The scientist's multiple eyes showed genuine fear. Your Majesty, the beings we're summoning aren't known for their restraint or mercy. Once they arrive in our universe, controlling them may prove impossible. Perhaps. But they share our fundamental understanding that hierarchy and strength determine survival. The humans operate under the naive assumption that cooperation and equality can sustain complex civilizations. Our new allies will demonstrate otherwise. Through the station's viewports, the approaching human fleet looked like a constellation of deadly stars. Each ship represented technology centuries ahead of anything the Empire could produce through conventional research. But the Empire was no longer operating under conventional limitations. Your Majesty, the tactical officer announced, human vessels are assuming attack formations. They're accelerating toward maximum engagement range. Let them come. Humanity believes they're the apex predators of this galaxy. They're about to learn that this galaxy has never seen true predators. The dimensional generators reached critical capacity, tearing holes in spacetime itself. Through the rifts came ships, if they could be called ships, that defied every assumption about matter, energy, and existence. The Void Hunters had accepted the Empire's invitation to enter a universe rich with new prey. Dr. Vasquez watched the sensor readings with growing horror as impossible energy signatures began emerging from the dimensional portals. Admiral, whatever they're bringing through those rifts, it's not from our universe. The physical laws governing those vessels are completely alien. Are they a threat to our forces? Sir, they're a threat to the concept of existence itself. These readings suggest entities that can manipulate reality at the quantum level. They don't just use technology, they appear to be technology, or something beyond our current understanding of the distinction. Admiral Morrison faced the decision that would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. They could withdraw, regroup, and develop countermeasures for this new threat, but that would abandon millions of enslaved beings to whatever the Empire had just unleashed. Or they could press forward, gambling that human ingenuity and determination could overcome enemies that seem to exist outside the normal rules of physics. All ships maintain course and speed. Whatever those things are, we can't let the Empire use them against civilian populations. Admiral, Captain Shen's voice came through the communication system from the diplomatic vessel Defiance. I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations throughout the system. The Empire just changed the fundamental nature of the conflict. Understood, Captain. Any recommendations? Yes, sir. We need to remember why we're here. This was never about defeating the Empire through superior force. This was always about giving enslaved species the chance to free themselves. Morrison understood. The true strength of humanity had never been their advanced technology or strategic planning. It had been their ability to inspire others to believe in something better than the status quo. Even if these Void Hunters proved impossible to defeat in direct combat, the idea of freedom, once planted, would continue growing across the galaxy. All ships, continue the mission. Whatever happens next, we make sure the galaxy remembers that someone was willing to fight for something other than dominance. The human fleet pressed forward toward an enemy that seemed to exist outside the laws of physics itself, while across 1,000 worlds, newly freed populations watched the skies and hoped that the strange aliens who had given them freedom would somehow survive the coming battle. In the depths of space, reality itself began to break down as two incompatible visions of existence prepared to collide. The galaxy was about to discover whether cooperation and hope could survive contact with entities that viewed consciousness itself as prey. The war was no longer between empire and rebellion. It had become a contest between the fundamental forces that shaped reality: order versus chaos, hope versus despair, evolution versus extinction. And, at the center of it all, humanity stood ready to prove that sometimes the smallest, weakest species could change the fate of an entire galaxy simply by refusing to accept that things had to stay the way they were. The first Void Hunter ship materialized completely inside the human battle cruiser Determination, occupying the same spacetime coordinates without any apparent concern for the physical impossibility of the situation. Captain Lisa Rodriguez watched her ship's hull begin dissolving around the alien intruder like ice in boiling water. "All hands, abandon ship," she commanded, her training overriding the paralysis that came with witnessing the laws of physics break down in real time. "Emergency evacuation, all pods away." The Void Hunter vessel, if it could be called a vessel, resembled a living shadow that had learned to hold a shape. It consumed matter not through any technological process but through mere proximity, as if its presence made the concept of solid matter optional. Where it touched the human ship, bulkheads, equipment, and atmosphere simply ceased to exist. "Admiral Morrison," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the fleet communication system, "the enemy can overlap physical space. They're not bound by normal matter restrictions. Recommend immediate." Her transmission cut off as the Determination completed its transformation from a state-of-the-art warship into empty space containing an expanding cloud of organic particles. The evacuation pods scattered in all directions, their emergency beacons creating a constellation of desperate signals. Aboard the command ship Sanctuary, Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at readings that made no sense according to any known physics. "They're not just ignoring our physical laws," she reported to Admiral Morrison. "They're actively rewriting them in localized areas. Wherever those things go, reality becomes negotiable. How many are we facing?" 17 confirmed vessels through the dimensional rifts, but, Admiral. Dr. Vasquez paused, struggling to process the data. "I don't think they exist in the same way we exist. Our sensors can't get consistent readings because they appear to shift between different states of being." Morrison watched as another human ship, the destroyer Courage, attempted to engage a Void Hunter with conventional weapons. The plasma bolts passed through the enemy vessel without effect, as if the target had momentarily decided to exist in a different dimensional phase. The Void Hunter's response was immediate and devastating. Reality around the destroyer began unraveling, reducing a kilometer-long warship to component atoms in seconds. "All ships, disengage. Fall back to minimum safe distance." But, even as Morrison gave the order, he realized the futility. There was no safe distance from entities that could rewrite physics. The human fleet, which had seemed invincible against Imperial forces, was being systematically dismantled by enemies that operated outside the normal rules of existence. "Sir," called Commander Torres from the tactical station, "the liberated worlds are requesting instructions. With our fleet engaged here, they're vulnerable to Imperial retaliation." Morrison faced the impossible choice that defined wartime leadership. He could withdraw the fleet to protect the civilian populations they'd freed, abandoning the fight against the Void Hunters but preserving human lives and the liberation mission. Or he could press the attack, hoping to find some weakness in enemies that seemed immune to physical harm while risking everything humanity had worked toward. "Dr. Vasquez, I need options. There has to be something we can do against these things." The xenopsychologist was analyzing every scrap of data about the Void Hunters, searching for patterns that might reveal vulnerability. "Admiral, I'm seeing something interesting. The entities seem to have trouble maintaining their reality manipulation abilities when they're in close proximity to strong emotional or psychic resonance." "Explain." When they dissolved the Determination, the process slowed significantly near the areas where crew members were experiencing intense fear or determination. It's as if powerful emotions create some kind of stability field that interferes with their ability to alter physics. Morrison seized on the possibility. Could we weaponize that? Create some kind of psychic field generator? Not in time to help with the current battle, but... Dr. Vasquez's expression shifted from analytical to hopeful. Admiral, what if we don't need to defeat them directly? What if we can make it impossible for them to coexist in our universe? Before Morrison could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the command center. The tactical display showed something that defied every assumption about the nature of the conflict. The Void Hunters were turning on their Imperial allies. Emperor Vax Thelon watched in growing horror as his salvation revealed its true nature. The Void Hunters had finished consuming 3 human ships and were now feeding on Imperial vessels with equal enthusiasm. The dimensional entities made no distinction between ally and enemy, all matter was simply fuel for their alien existence. Velvar, the Emperor, commanded his chief scientist. Shut down the dimensional generators. Close the rifts. Your Majesty, we can't. The Void Hunters are maintaining the portals themselves now. They've taken control of our equipment from the inside, somehow. The massive space station Godslayer shuddered as Void Hunter entities began materializing throughout its structure. Imperial crew members screamed as reality broke down around them, their bodies dissolving into component particles that were eagerly absorbed by the interdimensional predators. This is Admiral Morrison to Emperor Vax Thelon, a human voice cut through the Imperial communication systems. Your Majesty, we need to work together or these things will consume everything in the galaxy. The Emperor's pride warred with his survival instincts. Asking for help from the humans meant acknowledging the complete failure of Imperial strategy. But, watching his flagship dissolve around him provided considerable motivation for swallowing that pride. What do you propose, Admiral? Dr. Vasquez has identified a potential weakness. The Void Hunters have trouble maintaining their abilities in the presence of strong emotional resonance. If we can coordinate our efforts. Your Majesty, interrupted Grand Admiral Thexnull, the humans are right. We've lost 12 ships in the past 4 minutes. These entities view us as food, not allies. Emperor Vax Thelon made the decision that would define the remainder of his reign. Admiral Morrison, what do you need from us? The cooperation that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human and Imperial ships formed integrated battle groups, their crews working together against enemies that threatened the existence of matter itself. The humans provided advanced sensor data while Imperial vessels contributed their superior shielding technology. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Captain Shen, still aboard the diplomatic vessel Defiance, was monitoring communications across the liberated worlds when she noticed something extraordinary. The formerly enslaved populations weren't just celebrating their freedom, they were focusing that celebration into a coordinated effort to help their liberators. Admiral Morrison, she reported, the Tellurians are using their atmospheric processors to generate some kind of planetary-scale psychic resonance field. The Viridians are growing living sensor networks to track Void Hunter movements. Every species we've freed is contributing their unique abilities to the fight. The revelation struck Morrison with the force of a supernova. Humanity hadn't just been freeing individual species, they'd been creating a galactic community united by the shared experience of liberation. The Void Hunters, predators from a universe where consciousness was solitary and competition absolute, had never encountered prey that could cooperate on such a scale. All liberated worlds, Morrison broadcast across the galaxy, this is Admiral Morrison of the Human Defense Force. We need every species to focus their unique abilities on creating stability fields in local space. The emotions you feel right now, hope, determination, unity, those feelings can protect us all from these invaders. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across 1,000 worlds, billions of newly freed beings focused their collective will on a single purpose, preserving the universe that had given them hope for the first time in centuries. The effect on the Void Hunters was dramatic and immediate. As waves of coordinated emotional resonance swept across the galaxy, the interdimensional predators found themselves unable to maintain their reality manipulation abilities. Ships that had seemed invulnerable moments before became solid, vulnerable to conventional weapons. All fleets, engage. Morrison commanded. Target the solidified Void Hunters before they can adapt. The combined human Imperial fleet struck with everything they had. Plasma cannons designed to crack planets, quantum torpedoes capable of destabilizing stars, and experimental weapons that existed only in theoretical papers, all focused on enemies that were suddenly confined to normal physics. Dr. Vasquez monitored the battle while analyzing the unprecedented cooperation occurring across the galaxy. "Admiral, this is remarkable. We're seeing coordinated psychic activity on a scale never before recorded. Every liberated species is contributing to a galaxy-wide consciousness field." "Is it working?" "More than working, sir. The Void Hunters are being forced back through the dimensional rifts. They can't maintain their presence in a universe where billions of conscious beings are actively rejecting their existence." One by one, the shadow ships began dissolving, not through their own power, but because the fundamental nature of reality was reasserting itself against their alien presence. The galaxy itself, given voice through its newly liberated populations, was expelling the invaders. Emperor Vaxthelon watched the impossible victory unfold from his damaged command center. The Void Hunters, entities that had seemed unstoppable moments before, were retreating through collapsing dimensional portals. But what amazed him more was the coordination he was witnessing between species that had been enemies for millennia. "Admiral Morrison," he called across the battlefield communication system, "how is this level of cooperation possible? These species have fundamental biological and cultural differences that should make coordination impossible." "Your Majesty," Morrison replied, "that's what you never understood about conquest. When you force unity through dominance, you create uniformity, everyone becomes the same because you've eliminated all alternatives. But, when you create unity through freedom, you get cooperation between diverse abilities. The differences become strengths instead of weaknesses." The last Void Hunter vanished through a collapsing dimensional rift, taking with it the immediate threat to galactic existence. But the cooperation that had defeated them remained, connecting thousands of worlds through networks of communication, trade, and mutual assistance that transcended old political boundaries. "The rifts are sealed," reported Dr. Vasquez. "Whatever dimensional anchor the Void Hunters were using has been severed. They won't be able to return to our universe." Morrison surveyed the aftermath of the battle. Human and Imperial ships floated side by side, their crews having worked together against a common threat. Across the galaxy, species that had never interacted before were sharing technology and resources to maintain the stability fields that had saved them all. "Your Majesty," Morrison said to Emperor Vaxthelon, "we still need to discuss the original issues that brought us here. Your Empire's treatment of subject species, the war crimes, the systematic oppression." "Admiral," the Emperor replied slowly, "I believe recent events have rendered those discussions academic. My empire as it existed this morning no longer exists. The species we once ruled have demonstrated they can defend themselves and each other more effectively than our military ever defended them." The admission represented the end of 3,000 years of imperial dominance. But, for the first time in his 800-year reign, Emperor Vaxthelon felt something approaching hope about the future. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Morrison said, "we all learn how to live in a galaxy where cooperation is stronger than conquest.